12 million of these were built, and yet almost nobody who saw the very first one roll off the line thought it would survive its first winter. It looked like a tin box with wheels bolted underneath, a slow, humble little van with no chrome, no glamour, and barely enough power to climb a hill without complaining about it. But that same clumsy-looking box went on to become the best-selling van in the entire history of the automobile, painted in rainbow colors, printed on posters, drawn by children in school, and parked permanently in the memory of millions of families who grew up piling into the back seat for a road trip they never forgot. Stick with me for the next few minutes, because today I am walking you through 10 genuinely surprising, fully documented facts about the Volkswagen Type 2, the vehicle most people simply call the VW bus. And by the end you will understand exactly why a delivery van built for German shopkeepers became one of the most emotional objects on four wheels, loved by farmers, hippies, ambulance drivers, and grandparents alike. The first surprise takes us back to 1947, inside the ruins of Volkswagen's bombed-out factory in Wolfsburg. A Dutch businessman named Ben Pon was visiting to arrange Beetle imports for the Netherlands, and while walking the factory grounds he noticed something strange, a crude little flatbed cart, built from a Beetle chassis, that workers used simply to shuttle parts from one end of the plant to the other. Nobody else gave that cart a second glance. But Ben Pon pulled out a notebook and sketched a boxy van built on that same idea, and that rough little drawing became the blueprint for one of the most important commercial vehicles ever made. What most people never realize is that this entire vehicle exists because one visitor noticed a factory parts trolley nobody was ever supposed to notice twice. Now here is where it gets even more interesting, because the name Volkswagen gave this new van tells you exactly how they saw it. The Beetle was the company's very first product, so internally it carried the name Type 1. This new van became Type 2, the second vehicle Volkswagen ever built, and underneath its sheet metal sat the exact same 1131 cubic centimeter air-cooled engine as the Beetle, producing a modest 25 horsepower. Stay with me here, because the next part is the one almost nobody expects, and it changes how you see every single VW bus you will ever pass on the road again. And stick around, because there is a fact coming up later in this video that still surprises even lifelong VW owners. Engineers did not choose that small, weak engine by accident or by budget alone. They chose it because reliability mattered more than speed. A tradesman crossing the Alps or a farmer hauling milk churns down a muddy road needed something that would start every single morning, not something that could win a race and then leave him stranded. That underpowered little engine became one of the most dependable power plants of its era, and drivers loved it precisely because it never let them down. Imagine sitting behind the wheel of one of these early vans, with the engine humming quietly behind you instead of roaring under a hood out front, and a completely flat floor stretching out ahead because there was no engine block to build around. That flat floor was not a happy accident. Volkswagen's engineers had deliberately placed the driver directly above the front axle, pushing the entire cab forward to the very nose of the vehicle. Once you notice this, you cannot unsee how radical that decision truly was back in 1950. Nearly every other van of that era wasted space on a long hood just to cover an engine block up front. By pulling the cab forward, Volkswagen built a van that could carry as much cargo as a much larger truck while staying compact enough to squeeze through the narrow streets of towns built centuries before cars ever existed. That single layout decision explains why the same basic vehicle could become nearly anything a business needed it to be. And later in this video I will show you some of the strangest jobs this humble van ended up doing, jobs nobody at Volkswagen ever planned for when they first drew up the blueprint. But the story does not end with tradesmen and delivery routes. What most people never realize is that Volkswagen also built a genuinely luxurious version of this humble van, and it remains one of the most charming vehicles of the entire 20th century. Introduced as a deluxe model, it featured 8 small skylight windows built directly into the roof along with a folding canvas sunroof, earning it the nickname the Samba, or simply the 23-window bus, counting every pane of glass on board. Tour operators in Switzerland and Austria used these Samba buses to carry visitors along mountain roads, letting passengers tilt their heads back to admire snow-capped peaks through the roof glass as the van wound its way higher into the mountains. That single detail turned a simple work van into something that felt almost magical, and restored Samba models today are among the most valuable and sought-after vehicles in the entire classic car world, regularly selling at auction for well over $100,000. But the story you are about to hear next is, in my opinion, the most surprising one in this entire video, because it explains where the whole idea of van life actually began. In 1951, a German coach-building company called Westphalia was approached by a British military officer stationed in Germany, who wanted his own Volkswagen van converted into something he could actually sleep in. Westphalia built him a simple wooden interior with a fold-out bed, a small dining table, and even matching curtains for the windows, and they called it the camping box. Nobody at Westphalia expected much from that one custom order. But word spread quickly, Other buyers started asking for the exact same conversion. And within a few years, Westphalia was building these camper interiors on a regular basis, decades before the words van life ever existed as a phrase or a lifestyle. Picture a young couple in the 1950s driving toward the coast with a folding bed built into the back of their van, brewing coffee on a tiny stove while parked beside a lake, at a time when almost nobody else on the road had ever imagined a vehicle could double as a home. That one custom request from one curious officer quietly created an entire category of travel that families are still recreating in vans today. Then came the moment that transformed this practical little van into a worldwide symbol, and it happened nowhere near a factory floor. During the 1960s in California, a growing generation of young people began rejecting the fast-paced, consumer-driven culture they had grown up around, and they needed a vehicle that matched their values, something affordable, easy to repair, roomy enough to sleep in, and completely without pretension. The Type 2 fit that description perfectly. Musicians, surfers, and travelers bought second-hand vans, painted them in bright swirling colors, and drove them to festivals and beaches up and down the coast. Here is what most people never realize. Volkswagen never designed this van with any of that in mind. It was engineered in post-war Germany purely as an honest workhorse for farmers and shopkeepers, yet an entire generation on the opposite side of the world adopted it as the ultimate symbol of freedom. That unplanned adoption is exactly why the van still carries the nickname hippie van today, even though its original purpose had absolutely nothing to do with counterculture at all. Once that image took hold, the van's usefulness only grew wider and stranger. Emergency services across Europe converted these vans into ambulances because that flat floor made it easy to slide a stretcher straight in, while other towns turned them into mobile grocery stores, delivering bread, milk, and vegetables to villages too small to support a permanent shop. Fire departments used shortened versions to squeeze down narrow lanes a full-sized fire truck could never reach, and ice cream vendors across Britain and Germany still use lovingly restored versions today, complete with a chiming bell and a serving window cut into the side, because nothing draws a smile from a crowd quite like that friendly rounded face pulling up to the curb. Here is a fact that genuinely surprises most people. In 1967, Volkswagen replaced the original split windshield design with a single curved piece of glass, and enthusiasts still refer to these two eras by nickname, calling the earlier vans split ties and the later ones bay windows, simply because of how the windshield was shaped. And now, here is the fact I promised you earlier, the one that still surprises even lifelong VW owners, the one that most people watching this right now have never heard. While European production of the classic Type 2 ended in the late 1970s, Volkswagen kept building this exact van, largely unchanged in spirit, at a factory in Brazil for decades afterward. Brazilian farmers, taxi drivers, and small business owners loved the same qualities European buyers had loved 30 years earlier: simplicity, low cost, and easy repairs, and production continued there until the 31st of December 2013, when new safety regulations requiring airbags and anti-lock brakes finally brought the story to a close. Think about that for a moment. A vehicle sketched on a notepad in 1947 was still rolling off an assembly line, essentially unchanged at its core, well into the 21st century. Very few vehicles in automotive history can claim a working life that long, and by the time production finally ended, more than 12 million units of the Transporter family had been built worldwide, making it the best-selling van in automotive history. That number alone should tell you everything about how deeply this humble van earned its place in the world. By the time the last one rolled off that Brazilian assembly line, this van had appeared in countless films, inspired the look of animated cartoon vehicles, and become one of the most requested restoration projects among classic car enthusiasts everywhere. That is the real magic hiding inside this story. A vehicle born from nothing more than a practical parts cart became a symbol of family road trips, alpine adventures, countercultural freedom, and honest hard work, all wrapped inside the same friendly, rounded shape that still makes people smile the moment they spot one parked on the street today. Did you or someone in your family ever own one of these vans? Tell me your story in the comments below. I genuinely want to read it, and if this brought back even a little bit of nostalgia, feel free to pass it along to someone who might remember riding in one too.